All right, so I'm with my good friend August Champlin. He's a composer. He's been using Sibelius for a while to write. He uses you've used like East West Quantum Leap samples, or you used to use that, correct?
Yeah, I started off in college. Actually, I was a music major at Law University, and that was way before any of this stuff came out on the market. It was like the '90s. I used to use a sound card on my computer, like my old DX something. I don't know, 86 or something crazy. Like the video game quality sound card, and I thought that was top notch way back when. Of course, the program's out there, but I was a poor college student. So then I remember like going to Korea. I taught English there for a while, and I discovered something called like the Garrison Personal Orchestra, and I thought that was amazing. That was back in the '90s, so I bought Garrison.
Wow.
And it was about that time I discovered Vienna Symphonic Library, and of course, like the price when Vienna Symphonic Library first came, it was like tens of thousands of dollars, if I'm not mistaken. It was way out of my price league. It's like professional composers and Hollywood people could buy it. But then a few years later, I just decided that, I'd try East-West stuff. So I bought East-West Symphonic Orchestra, Choir, and a whole bunch of other programs by them. And I used that for a while. But at that time, the early East-West stuff didn't have, say, like legato strings or legato anything. It had like fake legato, so that didn't really work. And GPO was the same, it didn't have real legato. It was kind of limited. And then at one point I was like, you know what, I need something realistic to make mock-ups with, and not having legato sucks. So I bought VSL. I bought Vienna Symphonics Library Special Edition. It's like the poor man's version. It has like the normal instruments you use, but none of the special ones, and most of the articulations, but not all of them. And so that's kind of what I've been using as my go-to program with Sibelius. I used to use Finale, and then people saying you should try Sibelius, it's way easier, so I did, and I liked it. I stayed it. Sibelius also has these cool programs called like, what's it called? Like, they're called like,
Are you talking about Mirror?
No, or where Sibelius has a program that will interface with your synth and play the articulations correctly. Sound.
It's like play, like the way that play. Is that what you mean? Like,
let me figure it out. Okay, but it's like, anyways, they have these special programs that interface. So I wanted to use Sibelius for that project. I think like sound. I don't know. I'll look it up real quick.
I'm not too familiar with VSL. I don't even think I ever downloaded the demo. Sound sets. Okay.
That will let you play like your big libraries with Sibelius.
But that sound set works like for Sibelius, correct? Or like you would have to load that in like a software like Sibelius or Finale.
So like if like Jonathan Loving used to make a lot of them, and then companies started making their own, and sometimes they still go through them, but it's like a third-party app, and you'll download it, and you'll install it in the right folders in Sibelius on your computer, and then it will work in the background. So it'll make Sibelius interface with your sample library and play back the articulations. So I was interested in Sibelius. It was a lot easier to use with Finale, and I switched over. And so I've been using VSL now for a number of years.
Oh wow, yeah. August writes very. You write a lot of choral, correct?
Yeah, actually, most of the stuff that I write up till now has been choral. Just because I was in choir for many years, and I'd actually get choir directors to say, "Hey, we need an arrangement," and I'd be like, "I'll write one," and so my stuff would get performed more easy that way. So I started writing choral music.
Yeah. So I have a question for you on VSL. How long have you used VSL for?
I honestly cannot remember, but it's been a number of years. Like I started in different versions of VSL. Like I want to say like the better part of this decade, like the 2010s. I don't know when it started. I'd have to go look it up, but it's been many, many years.
Now, isn't there or are there different levels to VSL? Because from what I understand, there's like the starter VSL. When I looked into it a while ago, it was like this.
That's another issue. Like I had to change at one point to buy what they call the Cube, which is, it's not even their top of the line like package. Top of the line has everything in it. That's like $12,000 sometimes, depending on the sales they run. But the cube's like more moderate, $6,000 sometimes. With a student discount, you can get it for like 2 or 3, depending on what other products. Oh. So I could have bought the cube at one point, and I bought the special edition because I was like, I don't know if I want to spend that much money. I kind of regret that because the cube gives you all the articulation you could possibly want. If you get the ultimate version, that's something like every VSL product you buy has different versions, like the basic articulation with all the articulation. So like they call it like they have different libraries of the same product, and you obviously pay a lot more for the full libraries than you do for the partial library.
How up in price? Like how high in price? I mean, does it go? You know, and well, like what's starting? What's starting versus like what's?
It depends on when a product's introduced. After a few years, they might go down in price. But back in the day when I was looking at things, I was looking at like $4, $5, $6,000 for the cube.
Wow.
Back, I don't know when that was, 2010 or whenever it was. But like I said, I got into special edition. I think it was for $2,800, and I think that was for the full version. I'm not sure, maybe $2,100, whatever it was.
Wow.
I have to go look at the prices, but it was a significant amount of change. It's more than I'd spent for one like orchestra sample library up to that point. Even East West was a lot cheaper than VSL.
Oh yeah, I remember that because we both own the same East West Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
Really, the only thing I've ever found useful for East West Quantum Leap was opening up your DAW and then playing everything by hand and piano. But then I always notice like when you're loading up strings, you're only playing like super slow lines. Like you can't play really fast lines unless, like you were saying, like you loaded up a legato patch, and if you can play that fast.
That's the crux of the issue. Like all this time since college to the present, I've been designing a product that I could just open up in a notation software program, write the notes like a composer would who uses notation software, and hit play and have it played back at least realistically. I mean,
yeah,
without hours and hours of fiddling. And so my workflow, like yours, was if I started with notation, then I'd have to finish it in the notation program with really bad sound, and then export it as a MIDI file to like a DAW, tweak the file like crazy to get a good performance, and then, you know, after doing that, do all the mixing, and that all of that would take literally hundreds of hours.
Yeah.
Bits of music and have like the top-notch quality. And it's like,
yeah, it drags.
Make it like life easier for us.
Yeah, it definitely drags. I know because I had downloaded a sound set. When I first got Sibelius, I downloaded a sound set that was supposed to work for East West Quantum Leap, and I spent hours. I mean, I can't even tell you how many hours, maybe days. I spent like at least a good couple of days researching and trying to get those things installed. And I bet you could probably help me. I should have just called you, but I still, till this day, I cannot get those sound sets to work. Just to even compare what, you know, Noteperformer 3 versus East West Quantum Leap.
Right.
But I can't even figure out getting the sound set. Like, it just seems like such a pain because I know once you get the sound set, now you got to load all your patches. Is that, you know, is that right? Or
yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to say, like, I'm not trying to diss VSL or East West. They're both great products, and I'll happily use them if like a job that I'm working on requires a sound that only they have. I'll be, you know, I'm happy. The director I'm working with on a little short film wants me to use this kind of sound. I'll go use whatever I have in my sample libraries to give it to them. But for the purpose of like getting work done quickly, that was always a major problem. I mean, let's say I wanted to start a new score that didn't have the same like orchestral instruments as another score. And some people use templates. They make one template and they'd go and they'd use the template over and over again. That sounds like a good idea, but for my purposes, like with notation, that wasn't the way I worked. Like I wanted to be able to design a new template for every project that matched what my score was in, so I didn't have to worry about having these huge scores where I'm only going to use like, you know, 3 or 10 or the 20 of the instruments. You have 100 things open. I didn't like the idea of having a template, so that meant going back and opening up like a play configuration in Sibelius and loading in all the instruments for just the new score. And so that was usually a front end investment of about 40 minutes to an hour. And if I was optimally like just plowing through, it's totally boring work too. Flute 2, flute 3,
oboe. It is.
And you get through all that stuff, and what do you have to show for it? You haven't written one note, and you spend an hour creating a play configuration, and then checking it and what's wrong, why isn't this playing back? So finally you get everything working, and like you've killed 1 to 2 hours already. And then like, anything happens, like let's say there's an update, like play from East West Quantum Leap does an update. Sometimes your old scores don't play back the way you'd expect. To go figure out why isn't this playing correctly, and sometimes with those sound sets I talked about earlier, they don't update with your play updates. So sometimes, like with, for example, symphonic choirs, I recently upgraded to Hollywood choirs. It's a great program. But I also upgraded to the latest version of play. So now all my old East West Quantum Leap symphonic choirs scores don't play back correctly. Like if there's 2 adjacent notes, like say F and F, the second F drops, like for no good reason at all. It's like, what? So like those kind of things would drive you crazy. Like you're trying your best to use your software, to have the latest, the best software, and it just fights against you rather than works with you.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Okay, so what features do you like about VSL?
Well, I've been thinking the negative, but on the positive, I love the sounds of their instrument, or the sound of their instruments. I love the legato articulation, all the articulations. I mean, I mentioned legato because that was rare back when I started, but that's de jure, or not de jure, it's common now. Everyone has that, so that's not a big deal, but I still like the quality of VSL. And I guess I'm more into classical music than Hollywood music, although I did a few scores for little projects here and there. So I'm more, like, most of the music I write is for myself, not for, like a project or anything, but so I'm like a kind of like an amateur composer, I guess, in that respect. And I want to do orchestral music, I want to do choral music, I want to do music for friends or whatever. And basically, I'm looking for a classical sound, and VSL does that really well. Like, if you go to VSL's website and you look at the demos, they'll show you demos of famous pieces, by classical composers, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, whatever, and they sound really good. I mean, compared to other synths. I mean, like a case in point is, it's really hard to get any sample library to sound good in Mozart. I mean, Mozart sounds great for a real string orchestra with, woodwinds and some brass, but with a sample library, it sounds horrible. It sounds like crap. But with you go to VSL, it can do a decent job, pretty good job, and even better in romantic orchestral literature, or does fine in obviously in film music as well. So I really like the sound and the tone quality. Like for me, East West Quantum Leap, the demos blew me away when I first heard the demos, and they'll put really good demos on the East West site. And so a lot of my friends would go, they'd say, what sample library should I buy? I guess, and I would say, well, here's what the demos sound like. Oh, I definitely want East West. And then you get East West, and it has this big out-of-the-box Hollywood sound, which is great if you're doing big out-of-the-box Hollywood sound. But if you want something more intimate, you have to fight samples. It's like they're way too loud, too boomy. VSL doesn't have that problem. It just plays a kind of, I don't know how to say this politely, I don't want to say mediocre, but it kind of plays like a normal default tone for every instrument. You'd expect if you just write a note, and there's, you're going to get a note from VSL that sounds like that. But it also has all the special things like the forzandos and everything else. Staccato, everything else.
That's, I can't speak for VSL because, I've never owned it, but I remember having East West Quantum Leap. I still have East West Quantum Leap, but I haven't touched it. I think I open it up every now and then to load up like pianos, the Bösendorfer or whatever else. But I remember having that same experience where I listened to it and I thought, oh man, this has that big Hollywood sound, even though I'm really not into like the Hans Zimmer, sound. But it works for people. I think East West Quantum Leap is like you said, it's I think it's targeted towards Hollywood sound. It's that big movie, the big out of the box, a lot of noise.
And a lot of people say this too, but like when I listen to film scores and TV soundtracks, I can almost tell when they use VSL. I mean, sorry, when they use East West.
Yeah.
It's so characteristic. It's like they're using East West there, you know.
Yeah.
Like, the last movie soundtrack I worked on, the director wanted just noises, like from the TV show. I can't remember what it is, but like 22 or whatever it is. I think I'm saying that wrong, but
was it that action movie with the guy with the gun and stuff?
It's like noises. So basically, I had all my East West project, some libraries, and I can't remember which ones I used, but like just I drew heavily on that for that project. So he was really happy with the score, and for me it was noise. I tried to make dramatic and interesting noise that he didn't want real traditional music, and so okay, I adapted. It was a learning. I liked the learning zone, and I grew to respect industrial concrete noises or whatever. So I use ES West. I'm not trying to diss Andy's project.
No.
But you know, there's definitely that big sound, and that works in some projects.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's catered towards people who are composers who like that kind of sound.
Right.
But one thing I did notice when you long time ago, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, when you were mentioning VSL, I remember loading that up, and I think they have the demo of E.T., John Williams.
Yeah.
And I remember playing that and being like, "Wow, man, that is like that sounds real." Like if I heard that, I would have thought that was the I don't know, the Boston Pop.
Right.
But it sounds amazing. But like I wonder how long they had to take to get it to sound like that.
Yeah. Like I mean, I did an arrangement of somebody's piano piece for orchestra, and that's on my YouTube page. It's submitted to contest. I think it sounds pretty good. It's not ideal. There's a few things I should tweak even now. Like the sound of the brass was a bit too hot in the beginning of the mix, but I ran out of time before the contest deadline. I was, late as it was, but they graciously, looked at it. So that orchestra, that's all VSL basically, the one on YouTube now. And it sounds fairly decent. Like one of my composer friends heard the sound, like the recording. He's like, "What do you use?" I told him VSL. He was interested in buying it.
Wow.
But that just, I was running late, just trying to get all the sounds right. I mean, if you're working under a deadline and if you don't use a template approach, if you really are trying, and maybe I'm just stupid. Maybe just use the template approach. Forget about it. Create a workflow that simplifies things. If you're trying your darndest to start new scores every time and get everything to work, you're going to run into hours and hours of unexpected hurdles. And so, maybe I'm unique, but like for tonight's interview, I tried to prepare like MP3 and VSL side-by-side comparisons, and I simply ran out of time. We had to start the interview. It's like, I'm not ready with the VSL stuff. MP3 took me no time at all, like 5-10 minutes. Yeah. Still trying to tweak it. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow. I don't know. But
yeah, definitely.
Dozens, if not hundreds of hours of my time at least to get any of these big sample libraries to sound their best. They're worth it. If you have the time and you put it in, you get great results. But if you're on a tight schedule or you just value your time more, like you want to have a life and not be stuck tweaking things. It's not even music. You're not doing music anymore. You're doing the busy work before or after, pre or post production.
Yeah. And I had mentioned that in my previous review video that I was noticing even using DAW, like a DAW system, I use Studio One for my DAW, and I know they make it to where like you can use it. I think Sibelius as a rewire, or actually I've never tried it with Sibelius, but I've tried it with what was it called? Notion 6 or whatever, that program I was using previous to Sibelius, and it's a music scoring or whatever program. It's like Sibelius but the cheaper version, and it's made by Studio One. And I had tried to load it up in Studio One as a rewire and try to send MIDI like notation out into the DAW. Like even that took a lot of research, right? But because I didn't know about Noteperformer, so I was loading up like you were saying right now. It's pretty much like I was just trying to work around. Like my goal was to type in notes and just have it play, and it sounds good, and without any extra work. Yeah. And maybe it just might be lazy. I don't know, but I don't enjoy the, like you were saying, sitting and trying to find samples and, trying to find the right sounding samples and then trying to rebalance the orchestra. You're right. You're no longer a composer at that point. You're trying to program, you're trying to be the producer and the production engineer and all this other stuff. It's
Right.
It takes more time to do that. And then I found by the end, I only have like 2 notes, on my snare drum. It's like, it's not even like a big thing. It's not even an instrument. It's just, it's a snare drum,
Like if you're not a professional, I'm not a professional composer. Like I'm a teacher. So like I do music on the side. It's a hobby basically. But if you have limited time and you want to use your time to do music, you don't want to be fighting the technology the whole time. It's sort of like if you were a painter and you lost all your paints, all your brushes, all your canvases, all your palettes. Every time you started, you had to go to the store and buy all that stuff again. It'd be like such a pain. You'd be like,
yeah,
I'm not going to paint. Forget it. And that's how I feel as a musician. It's like there's so much just to do before you sit down to compose that it's like, pain. So then you end up, like for me, working on the same scores over and over again because at least the score is ready to play. Look, I'll play that piece again or edit that or revise that or whatever. Starting new stuff, there's like a challenge involved. I can't just start writing right away. I have to get the instruments up. So that really got in my way, and it actually made me not want to compose for many weeks and months. Like I've become less. The more gear I get, the more technology I own. I hope it's always going to make my life easier, make me more productive. And I found it the opposite to be true. Like I was probably way more productive back in the day where I had sucky synths that sounded like crap, but at least when I made music, I was making music. I wasn't dealing with let's make it better.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so how long have you been using Noteperformer 3?
Probably for like 2 weeks. I mean, I think you had started using 1 or 2. Do you remember?
I started on Noteperformer 2.
Okay,
so you actually got the better version. Like you start off with the better, the better.
Noteperformer 2 because you had shared it with me. I checked it. I was like, yeah. I think I'd been vaguely aware of Noteperformer, like Sibelius advertised. Somebody advertised it. I was like, what AI? Some program plays your notes, and I was like, I listened to the demos. Like, VSL sounds way better. There's no way I'm going to downgrade. And then Noteperformer 2 came out. And I was like, yeah, it sounds better, but still not interested. And then you started sharing me Noteperformer 3, and I checked out the demos, and I was pretty impressed. Like, I would say that Noteperformer 3, at its best, like used wisely by somebody who knows how to write for orchestra and knows how to use it. Sibelius knows how to use MP3. Can give VSL a run for its money. Of course, there's a time difference. Like if you spend maybe 200 hours on your VSL, you can get a better sounding product. But for no time investment at all, you can get very, very good. In fact, it's going to smoke VSL up until you put in so many hours that you hate your life to get VSL. So at that point, like that could save me a heck of a lot of time, and I might enjoy writing music again. So I downloaded the demo, and I was blown away because I have like literally hundreds, if not thousands. I think I have thousands of scores. Different. Sometimes they're just different versions of the same score, but just files, thousands of score files on my computer that I no longer can even open up and listen to because they have outdated versions of Finale or Sibelius or software that I have.
Yeah, you gotta date it VSL 1.1.
Like, I could open those up and change the play configuration and that would take me an hour. It's like I don't have an hour to just look. What is this file? What did I write? Yeah. So it's basically it's like all my music is locked away in safes, and I forgot the combo. It's like I know I wrote this. It has glass doors on it. I can see what's there, but I know I can probably play it by piano or try to sight read it. But if I want to push play and hear it played back, it's not going to work. So all of a sudden, I have instant access to all my Sibelius scores, no matter what age they were made. Like boom, and then I was like, okay, I still have Finale in my computer, and MP3 allows you to download in Sibelius and Finale. So I downloaded. I can have instant access to all my Finale programs, software, files, music compositions from whenever. And I use Finale way back to like the 90s. So I mean, talking like ancient history now. I have every single piece. I can hit play, and with a matter of 5 moves, like it takes me less than 30 seconds to get a file ready to play back, at least on Sibelius with MP3. Like just choose the what do you call the mixture settings you want with app. There's a little plugin, and then change to mechanical settings, change to hall reverb, whatever reverb you want. Boom, push play. 3 or 4 moves, and I can hear my old files. And I was like, oh yeah, it's cool. So I've been able to brush off pieces that I wanted to work on again that I haven't been able to touch for years, without going through hours of setting up since. And I started writing right away. It's like boom, and I've already felt like the results are more impressive in many regards than I expected. Like, it's not just that it's easy to use MP3, and it's dead easy. It's like super simple. But I think MP3 gives me more realistic feedback. And so for me, I don't have I've never played in an orchestra before. I've never, even sat in rehearsals that much. I've sat in orchestra rehearsals, I have, but, just rarely. Like, it's not a big thing. So I don't know exactly how things sound all the time. And I have to use my sample libraries, or in this case, MP3, to give me more realistic, or I can adjust things. Okay, this is how I want it to sound. Like, I have a BA in music, and I've taken private composition lessons, studied everything, theory or counterpoint orchestration, all that, form analysis. But there's only so much you can learn from textbooks, and only so much you can learn outside of practical experience. And I don't have a lot of that with real orchestras. Few of us do. So MP3 gives me this realistic feedback, and here's the way I can test that. Like a lot of my, I call them mentor scores. So a mentor score is a piece written by somebody else that I can learn something from, that I like, that, pretty cool technique. I want to learn something from that. So I may not imitate it directly, but I will study the way it's orchestrated, the way it's written, the way it's harmonized, the way it uses counterpoint, whatever I want to study in that piece, and use it for learning purposes. But of course, you can go on YouTube and you can get a lot of scores with, the score plays back as the video plays. That's just common. But what's really cool for me is to download it from, say, like OpenScore, and open it up in Sibelius and have Noteperformer 3 play it. And Noteperformer 3, for example, can play Richard Strauss's Thus Spoke Zarathustra, like Also Sprach Zarathustra, like the famous piece for 2001, Space Odyssey, like just as well as an orchestra. Like you think you're listening to a recording. And we talked about how it does, like Star Wars theme by John Williams, like just as well as the real recording, So it's like, at that point, you're like, okay, I'm getting realistic feedback because I can hear it, I can test it. I know how Strauss is supposed to sound, and this sounds like Strauss, or like Ravel, the Pavane, or like a Dead Princess. It sounds like the same as an orchestra almost, So I know I'm getting very accurate results. At that point, not only am I impressed by MP3, but then I start to go, okay, I can trust the MP3 to tell me how my own music sounds. And it's like eye-opening. It's like, okay, like for example, in tutis, like full orchestra writing with VSL, the oboe would be the loudest sound. It's like, I know the oboe is not going to be the loudest sound with a real orchestra. The brass will totally dominate. But the VSL brass doesn't dominate in a VSL mix. The oboe and other woodwinds might dominate. So strange things like, in a real orchestra, the harp can play as loud as it wants, but in a tutti or a full orchestral setting, the harp's not going to be heard. But with your VSL and with other, the harp will be super loud. It's like, okay, like this is not realistic. And then with with Special Edition Plus, maybe that's a limit. Maybe you have the Cube and you have the full version of Cube. You have all the articulations, and you could play like totally realistic music with VSL. But for my money, like with just the Special Edition, the brass is on the weak side. Like even they have legato, they have a lot of articulations that East West doesn't have, and so I rather than my old symphonic choirs. And yeah, I did download the Hollywood Orchestra. I tried that out. I just didn't care for it. That was even more template based than anything they'd done to bass. I couldn't handle that.
Did you even get it to work?
I tried to use the sound sets with Sibelius, and I couldn't make sense of it. It didn't work for me, at least maybe with a lot more tweaking. And again, even with the sound sets, it seemed like they still want you to use a template-based approach. So like you need multiple instruments just to emulate one, for example. It's like with strings, at least. That didn't seem plausible. It's like, why would I want to do that? Like, I'd rather use VSL and use their sound sets because I get better results anyways. Anyways, like, I guess that I'm like kind of rambling, but the point is, like, I couldn't get realistic feedback from VSL, and I can get it from MP3, and so that's really improved my writing. It inspired me. It's like, okay, now I want to write, because instantaneously I'm getting good sound, I'm getting realistic feedback, and now I know how things. I've always had in my mind like the sound ideal. This is what I wanted to sound, and now I'm able to achieve that. With VSL, I couldn't achieve my sound ideals. But again, it's like, oh, like I know the brass would play it this way, but VSL staccatos are too short. Like if you do every staccato in VSL is the same length, but in a real instrument, like if I play a quarter note, the staccato should be an eighth note. If I play a staccato eighth note, it should be like a 16th note, right? So it should be about half of the note value. But in VSL, everything's like the same, which is the very shortest possible staccatissimo you could think of. And it's like, I don't want staccatissimo. I want like the proper length.
Yeah.
Noteperformer is giving the proper lengths. Okay, that might sound like a minor issue, but if you're playing brass with, that's not going to sound or, inspiring. But with Noteperformer, like, okay, now I get my brass fanfares to sound correctly, and VSL still sounds decent, but there's still wrong notes being played, or wrong timbres, I guess is the better way to say it. Like, what's going on? Like, this is not the correct timbre at this volume or articulation. So.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed moving over to Noteperformer is it I don't know if you know well, because I don't know, I read the manual. The manual said that you can go into the fine ribbon and you can type in mix or reset. So every time I load up an orchestra, a template, just like the one that's already available with Sibelius. In the template section, the first thing I always do is reset the mixer to Noteperformer, and I notice like what you're saying. I didn't have that with East West Quantum Leap, where you're right, the oboe sounded louder than the brass, and you're like, well, there's nothing balanced about that, Yeah, I know what you're saying about the getting realistic feedback on your music is it's important to a composer, because you let's say, well, I mean, we're kind of amateurs composers in a sense that we don't really hand our music to orchestras. I would love to do that, but I'm sure you would too. But we don't have that luxury to hand it to somebody. But it's still nice to know that we're writing decent orchestral music, something that it's realistic, and like you're saying with VSL, it's hard to get that. It's hard to understand how you're writing if you're not getting the proper feedback on it.
Yeah.
If I said that right, I don't know.
Yeah. It is.
But, yeah, definitely.
To me, it's like dressing in the dark. I mean, like you have to dress in the dark. You don't want color clothes you're putting on. You feel like, it doesn't match.
Yeah.
That's how I feel when I'm using VSL and Sibelius, even with a sound sense. Like clothes, yeah, this is a violin. It sounds like a violin, but for example, in VSL, in like a Vienna ensemble, when you have mirror loaded, like Mirror Pro at least, you can go in and you can click a button that says set natural volume. So to make the comparisons I sent you, I decided to try that for one of the versions, and everything went down so much that I literally couldn't hear anything. Like I hit play and heard like little tiny sounds, right? Now maybe I did it wrong, maybe there's something, but that's part of the story. It's like, trying to do something, realizing you made a mistake, and then, okay, well, how is this button supposed to work? Where setting, and instead of doing 2 seconds or 3 seconds, or like I said, less than 30 seconds with MP3, hitting play and hearing great realistic results, you're problem solving, you're troubleshooting. Like, what went wrong? Yeah. Why isn't it working? And for me, that's not a good use of my time.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, we both we both have stuff that we do during the day. So when we come home, the last thing we want to do is sit down, especially, having a family. It's hard to justify sitting there and spending 2 hours on just getting ready for the next time you're going to sit down and work on music.
And I mean, like, what would you rather do? Like, sit down and troubleshoot, or go watch a movie with your wife? I mean, you obviously watch a movie, so you're not going to do music. And if your wife's like, okay, you have an hour to do it while I go shopping, like, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
Just setting up.
Yeah, especially, I mean, when you're using big patches, it's like 30 minutes just to load up patches,
Right.
So I was going to ask what you like about MP3, but I would say it's probably that it gives you realistic playback. Is it?
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea behind MP3 is brilliant. Like, artificial intelligence is something I'm interested in anyways. With sci-fi nut. By the way, I just want to correct something I said earlier. I talked about a TV show called 22. It's actually 24. I don't know why. Maybe that's a mistake. So I did a film project. I did music. The director wanted noises like the TV show 24. VSL gave it to me. Jumping back to your question, I like a lot of things about MP3. The AI interface is really something that interests me. Like, I guess to me, that's the missing link that every other sample library needs to think about. It's one thing to have a sample library. Literally, I think of the metaphor of a library. I used to work at a library in college. And going to a bookshelf and picking up a book, that's the staccato sound of a violin, or that's the, legato sound, or whatever other sound you want to think of. And then you have to plug that into the score at the right moment. And with these sound sets, you can only get one sound at a time. But in real life, as MP3 points out in their advertisement in their video, a note can change of its duration. So it could start sforzando and then go into, like, pianissimo or whatever. And yeah, there are samples that do that in VSL. And yes, you can combine samples, but you have to combine the samples. You have to sit there and do that. It's not done automatically on the fly. And so basically, a sample library is a giant database. And AI should be doing my work for me. I mean, that grunt work that I've been describing this whole video, like, why can't AI just automate that process for me? So if I write in Sibelius forte piano, it's going to dial up the forte piano sample. That's great. But then if I want it to crescendo back into sforzando, okay, I don't want to program that. You do that for me, right? And Noteperformer 3 easily does that, And maybe that's a bad example. Maybe you can do that with VSL. Maybe more experienced users do that all the time. But if there's program involved, there's effort involved, there's hours under the hood tweaking involved to get super realistic results, at least in my experience. Maybe I'm just, totally a novice. I don't feel like one, but maybe I don't know what I'm doing. But
well, see, and I think, sorry to cut you off, but I think what you just said right now is a point, because really, I think what composers want, at least me and you, what we want is just to load up Sibelius, write some good music, and call it a day. Like, I don't want to read a manual, like I don't want to know. It's like, it's kind of like reading your car manual. Like it's like it's that boring. Like, why would anybody read their car manual? Like, I don't know if you ever read your car manual.
I have.
Oh, okay.
Parts of it if I need to. Yeah, no, yeah. And I don't know if you want to play the excerpts now. We can just sort of listen and talk about them. But yeah, I think that's what I basically like about MP3. And I think all other software manufacturers need to take note. Like, it's just to set the context that people aren't into AI. Like Google, everything else is using AI. Like Siri, AI everywhere now. You have AI products in your home. You probably don't even know it. Whenever you use Google, Google has behind the scenes AI helping you do searches. So AI is improving your life anyways, no matter if you know what AI is or not. And I just feel like the music industry needs to take more advantage of it. And let me just give you this example. Like, back in the day when I was in college, I read an article in a magazine about EMI, Experiments in Musical Intelligence, by a guy named David Cope out of UC, I think it's Santa Cruz, but I'm not sure. And basically, this guy wanted AI on his old Mac to help him compose music in his own style, like a musical assistant. So he designed a program that could imitate Bach, Mozart, or whatever, and write music in their style. It was quite a successful program, and he did some good work with it. But then later on, there's this guy, I can't remember his name, and he's on YouTube, and he made like a program where he could take a recording of a famous pianist, for example, and he could take that and extract MIDI information from the real performance. But not like, to play with the Bosendorfer 3, but to actually reproduce old recordings and to make them sound good. So like old recordings done before the area of stereo, they could make a new modern digital stereo recording, whatever. Or even older, like records that are 78s or whatever. So he could reproduce the whole performance. And I guess his company went belly up, it sank, but there have been very promising technologies that have come forward with AI. And as far as I know, very few have come to market. So I want to applaud MP3 for saying, okay, let's make a simple product that any home composer can use, and let's bring it to market so you can actually buy this. And the thing costs, what, $130? I mean, like, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on sample libraries that I hardly want to use now because, like, I have a $130 program that will be up. Like, and why would I bother the other guys,
Yeah, you're right. I think when East West Quantum Leak came out, I spent, I want to say $1,500 or $1,700 cash on that, and I don't use it.
Right.
Ever.
Bosendorfer's nice, but
yeah, and you're right. It's almost like there was something in me before, like, I purchased MP3 that was like, oh, it's only $130, right? Like, how good can it be? And it's like you don't want to sink that low, like, because you're up here with all these higher end, sample, like, oh, this, but I guess if it'll work, it'll work. And I mean, my experience when I loaded it up, I never touched any of those programs again, and even before then, I wasn't really even touching them because I was so discouraged using them. And like you're saying, wasting so much time with loading up templates. It was just not even a waste, and that's the reason why I started using Notion, is because they had decent, sounding libraries, but still it sounded really general, like MIDI and, MIDI based. It didn't sound realistic, and I had to put kind of cover a lot of reverb on it just to get it to sound like smooth. But you're right. I mean, this $130 program has just changed the way that, at least I write music.
Right. I mean, and here's the thing, like, there's potential with MP3 that I think is going untapped. Like, think about music schools. Like, when I was in college, MIDI still sounded like crap. It's still like, little sound card noises or whatever in the 90s. And sometimes I feel like when people think of MIDI, they're still thinking of that. Like, okay, that's what MIDI sounds like. But MP3 shows how much the state of the art has developed since that time. So I'm thinking, how much would licenses cost for kids in college to use MP3 as compared to licenses for VSL or East West? I know for the schools that that focus on film scores, they're going to do VSL and East West or whatever else is out there. That makes sense. But if you're doing a composition degree at a university, you just need MP3 if you're running for orchestra. If you're running for choir, you need a little bit more. They have choir sounds, but they're just going to be oohs and ahs. But I mean, that's pretty much all you need. So for the license of, 130, any kid can do that. Like, you could bring composition classes. Like, I'm even thinking, like, sometimes I work at high schools. I could probably start a composition class for high school students who really want to know how to compose, and we could use MP3. And here's the cool part. Like, I'm also interested in research on music, and I don't want to get too far afield in that, but I'm working a PhD in education. I'm learning about something called qualitative research. And when I went to music school, we learned harmony by studying Bach chorales, and not even really studying Bach chorales. Sometimes some schools do that. We studied extracts or rules that somebody had come up with from having studied Bach chorales. So in other words, like secondhand learning about Bach chorales. And when you followed those rules, you would produce the same sounding crap that every other student would crap. There's music, and okay, I learned harmony, like I learned something great. Well, wait a second. You learned how to write for four voices, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, using the figured bass method and using chords that Bach used in the Baroque era. So then when you tried to write your first orchestral piece like an idiot using Bach, chorale methods, it sounded weird because that's not how you write for orchestra, right? So, like, back in the day, I mean, I was in the university in the 90s. This should have been better, but I went to the library, like, is there something better is there a better way? And like orchestration manuals, yeah, I mean, there were modern orchestration manuals, there are today. But in the 1990s, we still had in a library Walter Piston, a good orchestra manual. We had like, who was it? Um, like Rimsky-Korsakov's orchestration manual, and going back to like the even earlier Hector Berlioz's orchestration. And I remember reading these things, and everything was out of date. Like they weren't even talking about modern instruments.
They're talking about the French horns that you gotta like change out the key.
You're like, how can I learn how to write for orchestra with these books and this freaking degree where I'm learning how to write harmony in the style of Bach? And like, if I wanted, let's say I just told my teacher, like, look, I want to learn how to write just because I was a kid, like Wagner. Sorry, you have to write like Bach. It's like, why? Don't you know? I don't know. Well, that's not part of the textbook. It's like, maybe there's some school where you can learn whatever you want, but here we have an interesting thing. Like with qualitative research, you can actually create playlists on YouTube and just have all these pieces you want to study, like all the corpus or the body of literature you want, whether it be romantic orchestral scores or classical orchestra scores or modern film scores, whatever you want. And you can learn how they write. And then you could use programs like MP3 to help you. And so the route to learning music can be a lot more efficient. Now, maybe you want to learn Bach chorales at some point as a foundation, or maybe you want to learn counterpoint and all these other things. That's much better learned when you write well. You're writing based on actual models, not on like the false rules. The rules that we've extracted for counterpoint and for harmony result in crap. When you write using those rules, like people don't like that. And even like Bruckner was a famous composer of the Romantic era. He would follow those rules to the T, and then he'd tell his students after they learn them, please don't write music like this. Well, why bother learning it out in the first place? I mean, so I imagine MP3 being used in college classes to help composition students, and maybe another day we talk about the research ideas, but there's ways that we could learn and teach music much more realistically than the way we do. And so for me, it's like MP3 is one of the few smart programs out there for musicians that's truly smart. Like it takes the grunt work out, and it helps you do things correctly.
All right, so we're back. So August had just mentioned something about his computer, what he had to fork out for to use VSL. I don't know if you want to tell him.
Yeah. So the first of all, I had to build a custom computer because I wanted to use Mir Pro, Vienna Ensemble Pro, and VSL Special Edition. And back when I first was using a computer, back when I first did this, I designed this system. I think I had to spend like $4,000 on a custom computer, like I can't remember what they call it, hexa-core processor and all these like 64 gigs of RAM, just crazy supercomputer basically, just to run everything in one computer. Like I guess I could have gone with the slave or master slave thing and had a laptop on one desk and your like your desktop somewhere else as a server. And I did try that. I had that configuration too, but with this hexa-core system, I could run everything from VSL and load everything, and there was no system lags. It was fine. So that was huge. But then my very first custom-built computer I made for East West Quantum Leap Symphonic Orchestras. Their whole composer, I can't remember, they call it Composer Cloud now, but back in the day before the cloud, they had like, you get 7 or 8 programs for the Composers Collection, I think they call it. So I got the Composers Collection back in the day, way before even Hollywood came out. And I had to custom build a computer there. At that time I was living in Korea and teaching. So, I mean, actually, I'm living in Asia, so I got some of the computer components that we have to import. Some of them were cheaper, some of them were expensive. Custom built it. I actually did a dedicated server build, like this was a server grade computer that my IT guy at my university helped me. And so I mean that whole buying all that software, it was like $10,000. So if you're looking at, I hate to admit it's a heck of a lot of money on all these software. It's like, but that was my dream. I wanted to be able to write for orchestra and hear it played back realistic. Now, $130, and I'm able to do that with Noteperformer.
Yeah. Yeah, because like we were talking about before, we were talking about how we can just take our laptops and sit on the couch and, just be creative there or and not have to lug around this big computer. Even like going to Starbucks, sitting at a Starbucks, just, working like that. I mean, you don't have to lug around some huge tower or some, some bulky laptop that has, like a bunch of processing behind it. And that's what's nice about Noteperformer. So to end this, I wanted to play the fanfare, the VSL fanfare that you wrote, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so August wrote this, and this is using the first one is I'm going to play is VSL, and I'm not sure if you're going to hear it, but I'm going to play it right now. All right, guys, so that was Fanfare by August Champlin, performed by Vienna Symphonic Library. The next is Fanfare, performed by Noteperformer 3. Fanfare, August Champlin. That's going to conclude part 1 of this interview. If you'd like to see more footage like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Have a great week. Stay positive. Stay creative.